Emma, do you want to tell me a bit about yourself and how Little Bridge all came about?
So Little Bridge basically came about from a good idea, which is what I think anybody who's thinking of starting a business has to have. It's a really good idea and something you really care about, and so that's where we started from. So personally, my background was in teaching, but also I was a children's book author and illustrator. So yeah.
And building up Little Bridge over the years, you're CEO of a tech company now. How does that feel, and what has the journey been like as a woman in tech?
Okay. Well, I would say that being a woman in tech is probably not a lot of different than being a man in tech in the sense of starting a business. But before I say anything else, I just want to say I think there should be more women in tech, because I think women have something very special to bring to business and technology. Mm-hmm. I think we're very creative, and I think we're very positive about what we do, and we're very organized. If we've got a family, we know about running businesses. A family is a business in some ways. Having said all that, I think men have those qualities too. The downside of being a woman in business, never mind in tech, is that you can sometimes find yourself being labelled as being hysterical or difficult, or for having the same characteristics that a man would say was being determined, ready to fight your corner, and all the rest of it. So I think that, there are some things that unfortunately do feel like a disadvantage when you're a woman in tech, but yeah.
And what advice do you think would you give to those looking to start a career in technology?
Well, obviously I'm a massive supporter of all the initiatives that are happening at the moment to introduce kids to coding as young as possible. I think also, there is a real need to, again, get across to girls that this is for you as well. Mm-hmm. It's not a male area, but after that, I think I go back to what I said at the beginning. You've got to have a great idea, and you've got to have a passion to carry through it, and you've got to be prepared to work jolly hard, because there's no question about it. It's quite hard work.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay, and just terms in Little Bridge is a reasonably new or fairly new company. Just tell me how you started kind of exporting, or when did you kind of realise that there was a potential for your product overseas?
Yeah, well, I guess we're kind of different to some companies in the sense that, 97% of our business is export. And we knew that was likely to be the case when we came to start the company. So we were export driven from the beginning. And so the first thing we did was figure out, well, how do you reach out to people? How do you let people on the other side of the world, or even on the other side of the channel, know about your business? And obviously events like this turned out to be absolutely critical for us.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Having said that, also getting to know UKTI as well.
And how have they helped you on the way, or what products or services have they offered?
Yeah, well, I remember back in the day, one of the first things we did was get our own international trade advisor, just to give us some general hints and advice about getting started. So not looking at any particular, destination at all, just a general advice about how to start a business, how to deal with international business, and the particularities of that. And then I think the first year, so we launched in September, in that following January we were at BET, and that's when the journey started really, and so.
And just in terms of when you started exporting, which country was the first place you exported to?
So the very first country was, I think it was Turkey. Was the very first through my previous background in publishing, I was introduced to someone who would probably be an interested party to be our partner in Turkey. As it turned out, that wasn't the case, but he introduced me to someone else, and then that's the other thing I'd say. if you're going to start a business in tech, and if you're going to start a business where export's going to be important, one of the first things you've got to do is get really good at networking and building your network. So, never dismiss, a contact always take that one a little bit further, because if I hadn't done that, I would never have met the person who helped launch my business in Turkey. So Turkey was the first one, and then after that, we very much looked towards Latin America, and we were very lucky in that we closed a deal with the Ministry of Education in Latin America, and that really sort of got us going. So, yeah.
Wow. And just in terms of, networking, what advice would you give to kind of do that? Is it trade shows or?
Yeah, definitely trade shows, and, just get to know your fellow entrepreneurs, fellow, company founders, get to know, I think one of the distinguishing thing about the edtech industry is that it is a really it's a good network, it's a close network, and trust is very important, and people do help each other. So I think build those relationships, and I try very hard to reciprocate, and especially when I discover a new startup that looks really interesting, then I try and go out of my way to introduce them to people that have helped me. So yeah.
So like a very close community.
Yeah, it is a good community. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, great. And just going back to, in terms of, you said you got in contact with the government in Latin America and you managed to export there. What kind of routes or steps did you go via?
Well, I have to say it was a bit the other way around, in that we were lucky in that a minister saw our product here at BET all those years ago and was obviously interested in it. But I'd say the next big step that we took was to find a local partner who could make that make that happen for us. With the best will in the world, you have to also build a really good network of local partners to build your business internationally. So that was the next thing. We were lucky enough to meet someone who also was very enthusiastic about our product, picked it up, and helped us develop those contacts. Thereafter, there's a lot of visits in territory, so you've got to make sure that you're budgeting for those kind of things. A lot of socialising, which was very nice, but that's all part of the export story, I think. Yeah.
And in terms of funding, flying over is not cheap. How did you manage that?
Well, obviously, I think that's why you're asking me this question. There are support networks like UKTI, grants. There are definite routes that you can take if you go out as part of a delegation. You get support from the government on that. But in other ways, I think you just have to be, I'm going back to my female housekeeper sort of thing. You've got to just make sure that you're planning for that kind of thing. You cannot do it sitting on your backside in your office in the UK. You've got to get out there. So, yeah.
And just going back to, you talked about finding the right partners, and it is all about kind of localizing your content for kind of the different regions that you enter.
Yeah.
What tips would you give if you're kind of finding a partner or?
Well, it's difficult because for me, obviously a lot of international partners who are looking to do business with companies in the UK or internationally in general tend to speak reasonable English. We have a double advantage in that we are selling English language content, so the people we talk to tend to be pretty good at English. So that helps a lot. Having said that I've been in territories where we've absolutely needed translation services, and I'm delighted to say that UKTI can help with that as well, in finding a local interpreter, and we've certainly done that in visits we've made to places like China and things like that. We've had a local interpreter. You have to just be brave and get on with that. In terms of localizing your product, well, that is a huge challenge and a huge task, and it's very, very expensive. And I'm afraid I don't have the magic answer to that, because we've had mixed experiences. We've paid a lot of money for professional translation, which has been excellent. We've equally paid a lot of money for professional translation that's been terrible. And we've sometimes been very lucky, and we've just met a freelance person who's translated for us, and it's been very good. It's a difficult one, but you definitely have to deal with that if you're going to make your product work in another language. So, yeah.
So you talked about you've entered China. You said in terms of entering that market. I know China has been a tricky market for people to kind of enter in terms of culture.
Yeah.
I mean, what advice would you give in terms of kind of overcoming that barrier, or where did you first start in terms of that area?
I think, again, first port of call was UKTI. Then actually some Chinese companies showed an interest in what we're doing here at BET. Some of them turned out to not go anywhere, and others we're actually working on at the moment. So China's a territory that Littlebridge is definitely growing from the consumer side, because I should say that Littlebridge also has a direct-to-consumer product as well. So we go through the education market, but we also sell directly to families. And there we're definitely getting quite a lot of traction in places like China. And right now we're in the middle of negotiating some partnerships. I think with China, again, I can only stress again, be open, be honest and straightforward, show respect, as I'm sure anybody who's thinking of doing that will do. Have certain expectations yourself, so know what you want to get out of this, and don't be afraid to hang on to that. I think Chinese people, as well as anybody else, respect you for having a point of view and a requirement from them. Do as much homework as you possibly can, and as I say, be prepared to go out there and visit people and meet them. And I suppose with a territory like China, the only thing I'd say is it is enormous, so don't necessarily think you're going to get the one strike that's going to cover the whole country. You may well have to go and talk to different people, different areas, different regions. So be very careful about things like exclusivity clauses and that kind of thing, which actually, I don't know if you're going to ask me this, but I do want to say to anyone thinking about exporting, just be absolutely certain that you do your groundwork and get yourself well prepared with contracts and, lots of legal advice. I mean, I'm not to make it sound at all intimidating and frightening, but lawyers are expensive, but get a good one and spend the money, because you do need that. I mean, I don't mind telling everybody here that, Littlebridge right now has got a very difficult lawsuit going on, but I am delighted with the work that I did with my lawyers beforehand to make sure that we're in a very good position on this. But I'm afraid it is almost inevitable. If you start to grow and start to go into different territories, you will find that you'll hit some problems like that. So to just try and protect yourself as much as possible.
I guess building relationships is key.
Building relationships is key, but even then, you can think you've got a great relationship and then something goes wrong, and you've just got to make sure that you're well prepared for that. I mean, it's, I always feel a bit like I'm, coming along like the sort of, the bad fairy here, but you have to be aware that, it's a tough world out there, and you need to make sure you've protected yourself. So, yeah.
And just going back in terms of exporting, I know different countries work very differently. What are the kind of different models that you work with? Is it kind of working with partners, distributors, direct to market, as you said?
So, we have a sort of partner model to start with. So, we build a relationship with a local partner. We spend a lot of time researching those partners. We've created a document that we ask them to complete that gives us an idea of their view of the market and their strategy for taking our product to market. So it's all part of this preparation thing. I mean, it's done in a very hopefully constructive and friendly way. I'm not suggesting we give them something and, sort of hold them to account, but we do try and get them to educate us as much as possible. The other side of it, the direct-to-consumer, obviously the most important thing for us was having a website that was, first of all, versioned in different languages and was easy to understand, easy to navigate, and, so that we could reach out to families or indeed to individual schools, because we do have schools who bypass partners and come direct to us, which is another minefield that you've got to be careful about, because you don't want to upset your partners by doing that, but on the other hand, nor do you want to turn down business because you've made that direct. This is a global world, and the internet means if you've got a website and you sell from your website, you've got to retain the rights to be able to do that. So, yeah.
And just going back in terms of your website and marketing your products, what tools do you use, or techniques would you say works for you?
Well, like everybody, I did all my homework as much as I could as a non-techie. A few years ago, I did teach myself to code, so I've got a little bit of insight, and I've actually been involved in the building of some parts of my website, not all of it, but just making sure you've understood how important search engine optimization is and all those usual things. But Google AdWords, thank you Google, I'm giving you a plug here, definitely worth investing in. But again, be very, very careful that you do your homework and you don't waste a load of money on it, because it's very easy to do that as well. But and then also I try and engage with my partners out there, and I'm always very upfront. I say, look, we've got a website. Your customers may come direct to my website and want to buy directly from me. If we've worked out a joint marketing plan and you've invested in promoting the website in general, in other words, not their website but our website, then I try and make sure that they're rewarded for it because they're worth it, as they say. Yeah.
And what about in terms of, is social media something you use?
Oh, social media, yeah. Sorry, I should have said that. Yeah, of course. Social media is, part of, I would have thought, every tech company now's DNA. You just got to use that and use it sensibly and sensitively. I'm sure everyone has seen social media being what I call abused. In other words, just bombarding people with sales messages. The most important thing that I try and communicate to my team and try and remember myself is start living alongside your customer. Think like your customer, and they do not want to have you shoving your sales message at them all the time. So try and build a real relationship with them, however far away they are. Try and make them feel part of your family, if you like. So that's what we try and do with our social media. We use our famous dog, Domino, who reports regularly on Twitter of where he's been and what he's up to and all the rest of it. And, just try and keep a bit of lightness to it, but it's invaluable, I should say. Yeah. Yeah.
And would you say Twitter and Facebook are the main ones you use? Or?
Twitter, Facebook, Instagram are the ones that, because for those of you who haven't seen Littlebridge, the visual part of our product is very, very important to us, so it makes it nice and easy to use for things like Instagram. So yeah, but there's all kinds of things you could use on a personal level. A lot of my distributor partners now communicate with me on WhatsApp, but that's another matter. But I just say make the tools available, basically. Yeah.
And just before we round up, what advice? I see some ladies in the audience. What advice would you give to women who are kind of looking to export or start their own kind of technology company?
Well, it's really simple. Just go for it. Do not be intimidated by whatever you see around you. It always, makes me smile really when I see how much it still seems like a male-dominated industry, but girls have got so much going for them, and I think we make great business leaders, so that's what we should be doing.
Okay, great. And also, what advice would you give to those looking to export or internationalize their product overseas?
Well, I mean, again, I'd say go for it. I mean, the world is getting smaller and smaller in one sense, and bigger for companies like us to reach out to. So, I mean, the UK has got a fantastic reputation for education. Use that. You will almost always get a welcome from wherever you go. People will at least be interested in talking to you. And as I say, just make sure you've done your homework and you've set yourself up with the tools that you need to be able to do it successfully. And just don't be afraid of failing, because I could tell you some horror stories about, I mean, apart from the legal thing that I refer to, but just generally, there have been times when I've looked at my spreadsheets, my bottom line, thought, oh my goodness, did I really spend all that money on that and it went nowhere? You just got to be prepared for that, I'm afraid. I guess it's just like when Marks and Spencer's stick a clothing range that flops, that doesn't stop them having another go, and it should never stop you. You should, but at the same time, manage your budgets as well as you can, and don't try and do too much. That's the other thing. Don't go and think, right, I'm going to hit the world in one go. Choose your target markets very carefully and really nurture those, and chances are that will lead very naturally to the next one and the next one. I think I'm certainly guilty, and the first time I sort of got out there, I thought, I can go anywhere, I can do anything, and yeah, I do believe that, but I think you've got to do it in steps.